I'm really loving life fully remote, to be honest. I just naturally gravitated towards engineering. I told all of my friends that I wanted to do something different. I started as an intern, and within 1 year, I became a manager at the firm. There was literally no cryptocurrency exchange platform, and it took me about 15 minutes to make a decision. Nigerian founders are some of the most passionate people you would ever come across. And over the next 1 month, we had over 800 businesses that joined the wait list. From the beginning of the call, it felt so much like an interrogation. It was one of the most shocking for the average black founder. It's not very easy. It's really difficult.
What's up, Unfound Nation? Dan Kihanya here, your host for Founders Unfound. Thanks so much for listening in. That was Wole Ayodele out of Lagos, Nigeria. He is co-founder and CEO of Fliqpay, a company that helps businesses send and receive payments globally. It's June 2020, and here in the US, we are still wrestling with how to balance re-engaging the economy with a seemingly persistent presence of COVID-19 and the coronavirus pandemic. Protests, unrest, and tough conversations are happening all over the country and all over the world. And everyone from corporate America to tech giants to investors are evaluating seriously the ways that they can impact racial inequity in their companies and in society. We encourage all of you in Unfound Nation to find a way to get involved and take action. This challenge will take all of America to address. Learn and listen, speak up and donate, participate. Our episode is sponsored by Valence, great new community for Black professionals. They have a special offer for Founders Unfound listeners. Find out more in the show notes. As always, you can find our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Founders Unfound. Feel free to drop us a review on Apple or Podchaser. We really appreciate your feedback. Now, on with the episode. Stay safe and hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to Founders Unfound, spotlighting the best startups you don't know yet. We bring you stories of exceptional founders from underrepresented backgrounds. This is episode number 14 in our series of founders of African descent. I'm your host, Dan Kihanya. Let's get on it. Today, we have Wole Ayodele, co-founder and CEO of Fliqpay, a company that helps businesses send and receive payments globally. Welcome to the show, Wole, and thank you for making the time.
Thanks for the introduction, Dan. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad to be here.
Great. So you're based in Nigeria and not untouched by the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's start off with how are you doing? How's your family? How are things overall there in Lagos?
Well, Lagos is slowly getting back to its peak. So just yesterday, right, the new ruling on the lockdowns, I think the curfew has been reduced to just 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. So slowly businesses have recovered, right? But my family and I have remained indoors, working from home now for the past 3 months, I guess. Well, it's been pretty interesting. The last couple of weeks has been pretty interesting and relatively peaceful, I must say.
Well, that's good to hear. It's a pretty amazing thing we're all living through right now. And I imagine even in Nigeria, it's been pretty amazing and events unfold and you have to deal with them day to day. And I'm glad to hear that everybody is safe. And it must be amazing to try and run a small startup with everybody being remote.
Well, that was initially a little challenge for our team, but I guess the previous experience that we had was really helpful for us. So before COVID-19, my team was used to working 2 days on site and 3 days remotely, right? But transitioning to a fully remote team had its bits of challenges, but we've been able to optimize most of our processes. And, I'm really loving life fully remote, to be honest. I don't think I want to go
back. Wow. Well, we're definitely going to get into that then for sure a little bit later. But first of all, let's let the audience understand exactly what is Fliqpay? How does it work?
Okay, so just like you explained earlier, so Fliqpay, we help businesses and financial institutions send and receive payments globally, right? And we do this using cryptocurrency as a mechanism for our transactions, right? So essentially, businesses that use Fliqpay can now accept payments in their local currencies or using cryptocurrencies, and we instantly settle them in any currency they want to, right? And, we do this reducing costs by 6%. And in terms of the speed of settlements, we bring down the time from about 2 weeks to 5 minutes in some cases.
Yeah, it's an amazing product. I think you really caught fire on something here with Fliqpay. But let's first start off with understanding a little bit about you. So, did you grow up in Lagos?
Yes, I mean, I was born and raised in Lagos, lived there virtually all of my life.
And when you were growing up, what was your ambitions?
Okay, so growing up, when my very early ages, I wanted to be an accountant, right? But by the time I got into high school, I think my priority had changed. So I wanted to be an engineer.
What made you want to be an accountant?
So I guess my mom always used to tell me that I love math and I love to do calculations, and I felt like accounting was the best use of my talents back then.
And what made that shift to engineering for you?
To be honest, right, I had a really weird childhood, right? So at some point in my childhood, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do anymore. So I just looked at the strengths I had while I was young. I was very good with sciences and, mathematics and stuff. So I just naturally gravitated towards engineering, but not for any strong will or passion.
Did you know anybody who was an engineer?
My brother. So it could have been my major influence. Yeah, my brother was an engineer.
He an older brother?
Yes, my older brother, 2 years older than me.
And so did you start your career in engineering?
So yeah, I did. I started my career in engineering actually. I did a very short internship with Chevron, but shortly after that, I realized that engineering wasn't where I really wanted to practice. So there was a bit of confusion for me, really, studying mechanical engineering, doing an internship with Chevron. And, I was so sure engineering wasn't the path for me. So, I literally made a career switch from engineering to marketing just 1 month after graduating from the university.
Wow. That must have been an interesting discussion with your family, sort of that you're on this path. And like you said, your brother is sort of already on that path and has sort of laid a roadmap for you. And then you realize, I'm not sure this is for me. Maybe I should do something different. How did your family take that?
To be honest, this is not a very strange thing in Nigeria, right? Because like most people today, and that is probably a reflection of the labor markets after school, right? So you find out most people end up doing something completely different from what they studied in school, right? So, someone being an engineer and ending up in the bank is not a strange thing at all in Nigeria, right? So in fact, you would find people who maybe even studied like languages like.
But what gave you the confidence that you could just sort of switch? I mean, engineering is a pretty intentional path, I would say, right? It's you have to study different topics and master certain concepts. What gave you the confidence that you could switch to something like marketing?
Okay, so I guess I just looked at the skills that I had, right? I just looked at the skills that I had, and I've always had this belief, right, that with anything anyone wants to do, right, all you just really put your heart to it, you will be able to figure it out. So in my own case, immediately I graduated from school, I told all of my friends that I wanted to do something different. So I was open to internships. So I was very lucky to get an opportunity to intern as a data analyst at a marketing firm. So, but within a few months of working as a data analyst, I was showing a lot of passion for a lot of the marketing stuff we're doing back then. And I became one of the key account managers within the first 4 months. And, that led me to managing accounts for telecoms giants like Airtel, MTN. So like, it was really an amazing experience for me. So I started as an intern, and within 1 year, I became a manager at the firm.
Wow. That is quite a rocket ship to be on. Did you stop and pause at any time and say, wow, this is easy, or I can't believe that I'm making so much progress? I mean, how did that journey feel?
So it was a really, really exciting journey for me, right? Because I went to work every day, and I knew that the challenge that I had to face was something that I never ever thought I would be doing, especially all my years through school. But I mean, I had a very, very amazing boss. She really helped me settle into the role. And I mean, it's been really, really smooth since then. And to be honest, I have hardly had a break since I started on this course.
Wow. So tell us, how did you move from this apparently successful start to your career in marketing to the financial services world that you're in today?
All right. So it's a really funny story actually. So my relationship with my boss back then, it became a bit more personal than just the work stuff. So we had an idea together to start up a new business. So we wanted to start an alcohol production company in Nigeria. So I worked on the business plan. We already started making plans to get this off the ground, and I had an opportunity to join one of the biggest African banks, right? So this was off an application I had done like a year ago. And when this opportunity presented itself to me, it was a bit of a conundrum or a dilemma, I would say, because it was a bit of a dilemma because like this was a very, very good opportunity to not pass on. And on the other side, my career had been taking off so fast in marketing, and I was literally about to start a new business with my boss. But we had sort of an agreement, right, where, I go to the bank for a couple of years, while I get some more structure, the learnings from the bank would really help me in whatever business or whatever career I continue to take from them. So I feel like that was the major turning point for me, the decision to actually let go of my career in marketing and business to go to the bank. So I guess that was a big break for me.
Was the business idea a financial services company, the one that you were working on the business plan for?
Okay, no, actually something different. It was to start an alcohol production company.
Ah, right. So essentially, your boss slash collaborator said, let's keep working on this idea. But in the meantime, why don't you go and get some other experience with this opportunity with the big bank?
Yeah, exactly. I went.
How did that feel, though? I mean, were you conflicted?
It was a very big decision to make at the time, right? Because I was opposed to the decision back then, and like she was so insistent that even in our own career, one of the things that really helped her was getting that corporate experience, that experience of actually building a proper structure a couple of years, and she felt that that was something I really needed to have because like I was really, really bound for the world of entrepreneurship, right? So at the end of the what made that decision for me was, thinking about it, like the amount of years I had ahead of me, getting that experience right now, like this might be the only opportunity I might have to work in that capacity.
That's the way a lot of entrepreneurs think. I think the idea that I'm going to use basically my corporate experience or my non-entrepreneurial experience basically as skill building and experience building that'll feed the entrepreneurial journey.
Yes, that was exactly how she put it to me. And yeah, and it turned out very right.
Yeah, well, there you go. So you spend 2 years at this bank, and obviously you get exposed to the world of finance and technology and how those intersect. So what happens next?
Okay, so this was a very curious morning, and one of my very close friends called me, and it was onto something really big, and I was like, okay, he had been talking about cryptocurrencies, he had been into cryptocurrency trading, and this wasn't popular at all in Africa back then. And then he called me and he's like, so Wole, I think we need to build a platform that would enable Africans buy and sell cryptocurrencies. I felt it was such a crazy idea, right? Because there was literally no cryptocurrency exchange platform in Nigeria back then, and it took me about 15 minutes to make a decision to leave the bank.
15 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually really crazy that morning. It was, I got the message by like 5 a.m. and 15 minutes later, I, replied I was in, and within 1 month, I left my job and, we started building Quidax.
Wow. And so to tell me though about that, what was going through your mind? I mean, how did you make that decision so quickly? I mean, what was the thing that said, I got to go do this?
I'd actually been very keen on cryptocurrencies for a while. Being in the bank and really understanding the structure of how financial flows are, and even just understanding the concept of cryptocurrency, the value it could bring for African rep. That was like one of the really key things I thought about. But even much more than that was the trust I had in my friend, right? So this is someone like, I could literally trust with my life, right? And if he would, say we should start something together, and he was so certain and willing to take that risk, right? I trusted the idea, I trusted him, and I guess it was a very easy decision for me to make, considering
Wow. That's some sort of inspiration definitely must have lightning strike at that point. That's a pretty quick time to process that. That's impressive. So something must have been inside of you ready to go, ready to make this leap, to move so quickly like that. That's amazing. And so then you start your entrepreneurial journey, and tell us what was that like? I mean, what was that experience like?
So for me, it was a very similar experience to when I started with marketing, right? Because it was an entirely new journey, because working in a startup, and not just any regular startup, right? A cryptocurrency exchange in Africa, right? We're probably just one of the first 5 cryptocurrency exchange platforms in Africa, right? So there was not a lot that we could learn from. So it was a whole new experience. My first time working in tech, and I had to take up roles that I'd never had any experience with before. So I was leading products at Quidax. So I was the chief product officer, and I was also leading business. So I had to do a lot of learnings, a lot of 18 to 20-hour days, learning, speaking to people, reading up stuff, researching other platforms, talking to users. And, it was like almost an entire year of, doing that before we're able to finally come out with the product. Right. And I would say, I think that's 1 year is probably the most grueling years of my life, right? 1 year of my life in terms of the amount of time we're literally grinding, learning things, staying awake, and, just trying to get everything, that I really, really appreciate that, experience for me today. Is such a huge experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know what it's like when you hop into the startup world for the first time. The startup is insatiable in terms of its need from you. There's never enough time in the day. There's never an end to what you need to learn, what you need to focus on, what you need to understand and execute against. It's usually a shock to the system, and you can gradually get into it, and then sometimes you're just thrown into the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, very right.
So how long were you on that journey with that first company?
Okay, so I was with Quidax for 2 years. I was with Quidax for 2 years and a couple of months. Very, very interesting couple of years. And before I started Fliqpay.
Okay, so we will take a short break to hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with Wole Ayodele from Fliqpay.
Hi, this is Victoria Tinsley from Valence, a new tech platform and community focused on connecting Black professionals globally with mentorship, career opportunities, and capital. We're excited to offer all Founders Unfound listeners prioritized access to Valence. Use the link in the show notes to receive access to your free membership, and follow us on Instagram at Valence Community. During these uncharted times, Valence is here to help. If you're one of the many people in our community who just lost an internship, a job, or are just looking for some advice on what moves to make next, Valence just created the Boost Challenge. Join Valence and request a boost, a brief but potent one-on-one mentorship opportunity from some of the most talented and influential Black leaders in the nation, such as Derek Ali, Arlen Hamilton, Boris Kojo, and many others. Do you have knowledge to share? Offer a boost to fellow Valence members and help lift us all to new heights. Join the challenge today at www.valence.community/boostchallenge.
So we're back talking with Wole from Fliqpay. So Wole, when we took the break, you were talking about your first startup. Tell us a little bit more about how you transitioned from that startup to Fliqpay.
For me, I think the story from Quidax to Fliqpay was I think the most seamless career move I'd ever made. And I guess that's because of how similar the industries are. So the founding team at Quidax played a very key factor to how that experience was for me. I would say we're 4 co-founders at Quidax, and all 4 of us were very close friends, right? So we had known each other for a couple of years. We all went to the same university, we're basically friends, living together and building something really amazing. So, we're growing really, really fast. Back then, we're literally the only Nigerian crypto exchange then. So, but I started to notice something, right, from the kind of businesses that were signing up and the way the transaction flows were, right? It appeared to me that a lot of the volumes that we're getting and a lot of the demand were from our customers that wanted to buy cryptocurrencies and use them as a means to pay their importers in Asia, in China. People wanted to fund their gaming wallets with crypto because they couldn't use PayPal or any other of the funding options available, right? So this got me very curious, right? And I started to really look into it, like, okay, so aside from people who just wanted to trade cryptocurrencies for the speculative reasons, there are actually people who found real use cases in making payments using crypto. And so I believe that this was something that was so interesting because in Africa, right, it's well documented the lack of infrastructure that we have, especially with access to basic financial services. And then on the large scale for businesses, right, there's such a big issue with businesses trying to receive payments from other countries or trying to make payments from other currencies. And on the other hand, we have cryptocurrencies that have all these properties that allow people to do it so easily. So I believe that if an infrastructure was built that would enable people to make payments using cryptocurrency, this would really help in solving a lot of these issues we have in Africa. So the next step for me was to do like a simple experiment. I put out a landing page with a wait list, angel lists for Fliqpay for businesses to sign up to receive crypto as payments. And over the next 1 month, we had over 800 businesses that joined the wait list. The interest was like really crazy.
800?
Yes. So we had 800 businesses without any marketing join the wait list. So it looked like this was something that had to be built. So that was how Fliqpay started.
So, but tell us, how did you go about the decision that needed to be a separate company from Quidax, and how did that separation go?
Okay, so that's separation really went smoothly, and I guess that would be attributed to the relationship I had with my founders, because with the direction that we had at Quidax and what we wanted to build, right? At Quidax, we didn't only just want to build a platform where people could buy and sell cryptocurrencies alone. We wanted to build an infrastructure for people, for other businesses to access crypto services, right? Because like we have a huge bet on how like cryptocurrencies are the future of finance and all of that. And for us to really enable that, especially for Africa, we shouldn't only be able to bring individuals to buy and sell cryptocurrencies. The focus was on getting businesses and other fintechs to be able to access cryptocurrency wallets on their platforms and things like that. So in terms of the direction Quidax had and what Fliqpay was, it just didn't seem like something that should have been part of the company. So I think it was a pretty, trying to start Fliqpay as a completely separate entity.
Interesting. And so you decide that this needs to be a separate company, and you have sounds like an amicable separation with Quidax. Where'd you go next? How did you find team members and collaborators to try and get this thing going?
So starting Fliqpay, right? So there's David, my CTO today, who I've been really close to for about 6 years already. In the past, we had worked on a bunch of projects together. So we had a software advisory firm that, majored on building softwares for banks and, major telecoms companies. So we had worked on like some small projects in the past, and, we developed a very, very close relationship. So when I was setting out to start Fliqpay, got together with David, spoke about the idea, and like, funny enough, it was something that he had already been thinking about. So it was an idea I was really passionate about, and he was actually going to build a product out of it. So it just made good sense for the two of us to team up and start Fliqpay. Between then and now, I think David and I raised a very early round from a local angel, and we pulled in some capital, and that's been the journey so far.
So tell us more about how it's working. So give us an example of a customer and how they would use Fliqpay right now.
Okay, so typical customer today, right, could be an e-commerce platform, right? So we have e-commerce platforms that have customers from all over the world and are unable to make payments to buy stuff on their platform. So they can now integrate Fliqpay, and at the point of checkout, the customer could now pay with their credit card, the debit card, or they could also pay through cryptocurrencies, right? And once that payment is made, the platform gets the local currency value instantly, right? So if this business is located in Nigeria, for instance, so anybody from Brazil, from the US, from anywhere in the world could actually pay through cryptocurrency, and that store owner gets the Naira value for that payment instantly without any risk of chargeback, without any risk of fraud.
Interesting. And so for those who don't know a lot about cryptocurrency, I mean, what's sort of the pent up demand, I guess? How do you think about, like you said, people who want to use credit cards, debit cards, PayPal, whatever, other wallets? What's the opportunity with people who want to spend with cryptocurrency? Is there a kind of a market assessment, or is there a way to think about that?
From that, one of the key things that we did very early on was to really highlight the niche markets that we wanted to target. And we found that the people who have the most need for cryptocurrency as a form of payment today are the people who are literally frozen out from the current payments infrastructure that exists. So you find people in the gaming industry, right, trying to fund their gaming wallets, take towards cryptocurrency, because like cryptocurrency enables them to do this very easily without paying so much fees from regular card providers, or in a lot of cases. So just give you an example of the issues that we face. So in Africa, Africans can't access PayPal to make payments, right? And even platforms like Stripe aren't even supported in Africa. So most platforms today that want to be able to serve like a wider range of people without having to go through the pain of integrating with different payments networks in all those currencies can easily use cryptocurrency, and there is so much demand in the gaming sector, in the e-commerce sector, and especially for financial institutions as well. And I think that is the most curious case for me, because financial institutions are now able to make cross-border payments, and cryptocurrency reduces the cost and makes the settlement time a lot shorter.
Can you give us some reference point for that? What's the difference?
Okay, so in terms of how we compare with regular payments rails, a transaction between Nigeria and Germany, for instance, using a platform like TransferWise and using a platform like Fliqpay, our rates are 6%. The cost of transacting on Fliqpay is about 6 times cheaper than doing that same transaction on TransferWise. And where it will take about 7 hours for that payment to be settled on TransferWise and about 5 days with the bank, using Fliqpay, that transaction could be processed in about 5 minutes.
5 minutes versus 5 days? Did I hear you right?
Yes. And in some cases, it's actually as bad as 2 weeks. Especially when you use like the Swift network to make these payments.
Wow, that's impressive. So when it's that dramatic a change in benefit, you must have people and companies that are coming to you. How has the demand been? I mean, you talked about the sort of catalyst for the company being this idea of building a wait list and demonstrated demand. How has been the growth of the customer base?
So our growth has been pretty huge since we actually launched our product. In terms of the volumes we process, right? In the last 9 months, we processed about over $15 million, right, in payments, and that has been on a 30% month-on-month growth. And right now we have most of the biggest payments companies in Africa on our wait list to get on our cross-border payments network. So like the traction has been really crazy. So in the last 2 months, we actually doubled our user base. So we've been growing really fast, and I would say a lot of that has been because of the changes that we made to our platform after Techstars.
Interesting. And so that's a lot of growth in just the last 2 months. Has the COVID-19 pandemic been something that has affected? I mean, obviously you talked about the impact on your structure and being remote and your team, but in terms of the business, has it been neutral, positive, a challenge? How would you view its impact on your business, if you can assess that?
So I think COVID-19 actually impacted our business positively. And that will be because of the macroeconomic factors. So for cross-border payments, right, essentially there are factors that affect the pricing of those payments, like the availability of FX by the government. So in Nigeria, for instance, most of the outbound cross-border payments that are made are funded by FX provided by the government. So COVID-19 caused a lot of economic issues. So that would mean that most currencies were devalued. So most businesses that were holding a lot of these currencies for settling transactions lost so much money. And then the exchange rates and the pressure on most local African currencies were really, really high. And that means that the banks are no more a feasible way to actually move this money, right? So in fact, there is almost no liquidity to do some of these transactions. And using crypto as a way to settle this transaction has even become a lot more imperative. So I think that's one of the things that has really driven the demand for our products as well.
Nice. So tell us, what's the future? I mean, where does this go? How big can this get? What's your ambition for Fliqpay?
Okay, so our ambition for Fliqpay, right, over the next couple of years would be to open up to 50 different currency corridors and get to a point where different financial institutions across the world can now connect to our network to get instant settlements for payments in all these currencies that we support.
And how big, like if you had to put a number on that, is that millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars potential? What do you think?
Right now, we're processing something between $2 to $3 million. But from our projections, we expect that to go as high as $500 million monthly in the next 2 years.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing stuff. We're going to take another short break and we'll be back soon with Wole from Fliqpay.
Hi, this is Victoria Tinsley from Valence, a new tech platform and community focused on connecting Black professionals globally with mentorship, career opportunities, and capital. We're excited to offer all Founders Unfound listeners prioritized access to Valence. Use the link in the show notes to receive access to your free membership and follow us on Instagram at Valence Community. During these uncharted times, Valence is here to help. If you're one of the many people in our community who just lost an internship, a job, or are just looking for some advice on what moves to make next, Valence just created the Boost Challenge. Join Valence and request a boost, a brief but potent one-on-one mentorship opportunity from some of the most talented and influential Black leaders in the nation, such as Derek Ali, Arlen Hamilton, Boris Kojo, and many others. Do you have knowledge to share? Offer a boost to fellow Valence members and help lift us all to new heights. Join the challenge today at www.valence.community/boost challenge.
We're back with Wole from Fliqpay. So Wole, great story with Fliqpay. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, you mentioned Techstars, and that's kind of how we met. Tell the audience about your experience with Techstars. You went through the most recent cohort, essentially as the coronavirus epidemic was taking off. So what was the experience like?
So my experience with Techstars has been nothing short of beautiful. I mean, like, it's one of the best decisions we've made for our company since we started. I mean, I guess Corona could have affected it, but I mean, I was very, 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 very lucky for the amazing team and how they were able to manage the switch to a fully virtual program. So I think about 3 to 4 weeks into the program, we had to fully go virtual due to the impacts from the lockdowns. But in terms of the network that we've been exposed to, it's been really, really, really amazing. So Techstars introduced us to so many mentors that helped us think about things in a much better way. Like with the design thinking workshops and, all of the hands-on approach that you get from the entire Techstars team. It's almost as if you're like part of like a new family. So yeah, I would recommend Techstars to any startup, any African startup to get into Techstars.
Wow, that's a nice endorsement. What do you think was the biggest challenge once the program went remote, essentially?
I would say when the program went remote, the biggest challenge would have been connecting with the other founders in the cohorts, right? Because like one of the things that I was really looking forward to was those connections with the other cohort members, but being fully virtual all the time, few times we had to interact, would mostly be on official calls. But, the Techstars team really tried. We're still all able to bond, and even till now, like, we're still all friends. And that, I think that was the greatest challenge. But in terms of the value that we're getting from the program, I don't think COVID-19 affected that in any way.
That's really good to hear, because probably for the foreseeable future, a lot of these programs will have to be virtual and remote. And I would imagine, like you said, one of the biggest challenges is that you're in this collaborative learning environment with other entrepreneurs, and not being around them or in that day-to-day sort of common physical space would present some challenges, but it sounds like Techstars is adapting.
Yeah.
So tell us about your fundraising journey. So you talked about the fact that you raised some angel money initially to get Fliqpay off the ground. Are you thinking about raising money? Have you raised other money? What's that experience been like for you?
So we're currently in a fundraising process. In terms of the experience, I think it's been going as well as it gets, especially considering the global situation, the global economic situation. But I'm pretty confident about the round. We've gotten commitments from, really good investors. We've raised some funds from Techstars, and, a bunch of other angel investors committed as well. So I believe over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having some announcement on completion of the round.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful news. That's good to hear. So tell us, though, one of the things that I think is a challenge for founders of African descent, both here in the US and probably in Africa, do you view that you're perceived, or your opportunities perceived differently, being that your foundation and your sort of headquarters and your origin comes from within Africa and Nigeria?
Okay, so Fliqpay is actually headquartered in Toronto, right? And perhaps that could be one of the reasons why it's a bit easier for us. But but I must say, the raising money as a Black founder, there's definitely an effect, and you could actually see it. So there are lots of funds that would not even invest in African-focused companies by default, right? And maybe that's like 40% of the people you would be speaking with as a Black founder. And, you would have cases like situation I had very recently of a potential investor that actually committed and, speaking with some racial undertone. So, it's actually pretty difficult. So I know that even though we have had it a bit easier for us at Fliqpay, and that's a lot of that is due to the business we're operating in and, some of our unique circumstances, right? But for the average Black founder, it's not very easy. It's really difficult raising capital.
Yeah, and as I talk to other founders, this seems to be a common refrain. So you mentioned this last experience. Can you unpack that a little bit? You said that there was some racial undertones with that.
Yeah, so it was a very recent experience I had actually a couple weeks back. So I was expecting the usual where we, talk about what we're trying to build and, go through some of those like really important things. But, from the beginning of the call, it felt so much like an interrogation. I hardly ever had any time to speak. And, he actually made the VC actually made some comments, about how, he hates Germans. I would really not like to go so much into it because it's not a very nice experience to really recount.
Sure. Wow. So an investor felt comfortable enough to just lay that out there for you or at you.
It was one of the most shocking conversations I've ever had. It was so terrible. And this is already after like weeks and weeks of conversations and, already commitments made. This was like really at the final stage, speaking to one of the partners, and I was certain that I couldn't work with that kind of firm, so had to pull out of the deal 5 minutes after the call. It was a very bad experience.
Wow, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And unfortunately, you're right. It's more common than a once in a while thing. So it's still out there. It's still a challenge. So have there been any organizations, individuals, mentors that have been beneficial to you or have helped you along the way, especially as a Black founder?
So I would say Techstars has been like one of the most impactful organizations I've had to work with in the past couple of years, right? So I would say Techstars has been really impactful. They've exposed us to lots of mentors that really helped us along our journey. Like you, Dan, of course, one of the mentors, and Shimani, Sarah. I've had like some really amazing mentors from the Techstars network that have been really, really helpful along the journey so far.
That's good to hear. So you mentioned that the company is headquartered in Toronto. How did you decide as Toronto for headquarters?
Okay, so Toronto was very, very strategic for Fliqpay, and that's because of when we're setting Fliqpay up, we already had like a vision for the company we're trying to set up and the regions wanted to work in. So, and in terms of regulation, so we're getting regulated in Canada and, operating out of that structure, out of the Canadian structure for the global products we're building. Having a structure from Canada, from Nigeria, that's like very, very helpful for us.
Makes sense, especially with the fintech industry. Like you said, you have to be strategic just because of the regulatory aspects and the ability, especially like you said, your company's focused on cross-border and the ability to have payments and money that can exchange between regions. I would imagine you have to be very strategic about where your governing headquarters or the regulations that govern your headquarters are.
Very true.
So tell us, Wole. So one of the questions we like to ask is a retrospective question, so to speak. So if you could go back, let's say to pre your startup journey, so maybe when you're working at the bank, and talk to that version of yourself, that Wole, back a few years ago, and give him advice from this Wole, the 2020 seasoned entrepreneur, in terms of how to go about starting the journey, what kind of advice would you give him?
Well, I would say to read more. So I only started like reading a couple years ago, right? But so I'd have loved to have started reading like a lot earlier. But I mean, it's never too late. And another thing I think I'd have liked to learn was how to code. I think that's one of the skills I'd have liked to learn. I mean, it's still something I plan to in the next couple of months and years. I mean, depending on how things turn out.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's always easy to go back in hindsight to say these things. So I find it interesting to hear what people have to say about their mentorship of themselves. I guess one question that we can kind of wrap up with is, we have a lot of audience here in the United States. What's one misconception that people have about business in Nigeria? But another way to think about it is, what's something that people don't know about Nigeria that you wish more people knew?
Oh, okay. So I wish more people would know about the passion of Nigerian founders. So like Nigerian founders are some of the most passionate people you would ever come across, right? They will be willing to like literally do anything to ensure their business succeed and grow. So, I mean, working out of some tough conditions sometimes, it really takes a lot of grit for to really keep trying. And I really, really would love for people to know that about us.
If you are any indication, Wole, you're certainly a positive data point on that fact for sure. Well, this conversation has been so great. I really appreciate all the time. But before we go, why don't you tell the audience if there's a way to get a hold of you or to find out more about Fliqpay, how would they do that?
To find out more about Fliqpay, you can just head out to fliqpay.com, fliqpay.com, or so yeah, you could, and then you could also hit me up at wole@fliqpay.com, or that's WOLE@fliqpay.com.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
All right, then. Thanks so much for having me.
We'd like to thank our guest, Wole Ayodele, and our sponsor, Valence. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, or simply go to foundersunfound.com/listen to. That's listen, T-O. And follow us on Twitter and Instagram at foundersunfound. This podcast was produced by Dan Kihanya. Social media and other promotion by Umama Marzouk. Our music was composed by Neil Cross, Blaine Green, Enrique Molano Jimenez, Argyris Otas, Marshall Usinger, Michael Vignola, and Bruce Zimmerman. I am Dan Kihanya, and you've been listening to Founders Unfound.